There are women who don't kill you with poison, but with silence. Kafka knew this, and he wrote the truth that many are afraid to face. Franz Kafka was a writer who lived a long time ago and wrote strange stories about people who felt lost in the world. He didn't write fairy tales with happy endings. Instead, his stories showed how people sometimes feel alone even when they are with others. When Kafka talked about relationships, he showed how unspoken words can hurt more than shouting. Imagine when someone you care deeply about stops talking to you, or looks at you in a way that makes you feel small. That silence can hurt more than any words. Kafka understood this feeling because he experienced it himself. He was a very sensitive, a person who worried deeply about what others thought of him. He was afraid of not being good enough. This fear is something many people experience, even if they don't talk about it in Kafka's stories. The characters often feel as if they're being judged by an invisible tribunal. They don't know exactly what they did wrong, but they feel they did something. It's like when you do something and, even if no one scolds you, you feel like you've let someone down. Kafka also wrote about how people sometimes transform into strange things when they feel rejected. In one of his most famous stories, a man wakes up transformed into a giant insect. This sounds strange, but it's actually a way of talking about how someone can feel when they feel like no one understands or accepts them anymore. The writer saw relationships not as fairy tales, but as mirrors that reveal who we truly are. Sometimes, what we see in these mirrors frightens us. We see our insecurities, our fears, the parts of ourselves we try to hide from others. The silence Kafka mentions isn't just when someone stops speaking. It's also when we feel like we can't be who we truly are around certain people. It's when we change our ways to please others and, little by little, forget who we truly are. The truths Kafka wrote were difficult to face because they revealed human fragility. They showed how easy it is to lose ourselves when we try too hard to please someone, and how difficult it is to maintain who we are when we fear rejection. Kafka didn't speak of love as a romantic tale, but as a minefield. He saw in relationships the fragility of human beings in the eyes of others. This perception isn't far-fetched. Everyone has felt the weight of losing themselves trying to be accepted. When Franz Kafka wrote about love and relationships, he didn't use fancy words or talk about princes and princesses who lived happily ever after. Instead, he compared relationships to dangerous places, where every step must be taken carefully, like walking through a field full of mines that could explode at any moment. But what did Kafka mean by this? He was trying to show us that when we're in a relationship, whether with friends, family, or someone we love, we often feel fragile. We worry about what the other person thinks of us. Does they think I'm intelligent? Does they like the way I am? Does they think I'm handsome or beautiful? This concern about being looked at isn't something only adults experience. Even schoolchildren experience this feeling. Remember that time you changed the way you spoke or dressed just so your classmates would think you were cool? Or when you felt sad because someone didn't want to play with you? That's exactly what Kafka was talking about. Interestingly, Kafka realized something that happens to many people. Sometimes, in our attempt to be accepted by others, we can lose ourselves. We can forget what we truly like, what makes us happy, just to please someone else. It's as if, little by little, we're erasing who we truly are. In Kafka's stories, the characters often feel as if they're constantly being watched, judged for things they don't even know they've done. They feel small in the world, as if they were insects compared to giants. This feeling of being small, of not being enough, is something we've all felt at some point. Maybe when we get a bad grade in school and feel like we've disappointed our parents, or when a friend chooses to play with someone else instead of us, or when someone we like doesn't like us back. Kafka helps us understand that these feelings are normal, but he also warns us we can't let the fear of not being accepted define who we are. We can't completely transform ourselves just to please others, because in the end, we may feel empty inside. Kafka saw that some women had the ability to see deep inside a man, his most hidden weaknesses, and use them as a mirror. This rare sensitivity can be both a gift and a curse. Franz Kafka noticed something special in certain people, especially some women he knew. He realized they had a different kind of vision, not a vision of the eyes, but a vision of the heart. They could see parts of people that were otherwise hidden, as if they could see through a wall. Imagine that each person has a secret box inside themselves, where they keep their greatest fears, their insecurities, and the things they don't want anyone to see. Most people can't open this box in others, but, according to Kafka, some people have this special key. This rare ability to see into people's inner selves is like having a superpower. And like any superpower, it can be used for good or for evil. When someone can see our most fragile parts, they can help us accept them and come to peace with who we are. It's like a wonderful gift. A gift. For example, think about when you're sad but don't want to tell anyone, yet your mom or best friend notices and asks, "What happened?" They saw something you tried to hide. This sensitivity can be comforting, but on the other hand, when someone sees our weaknesses, they also gain power over us. It's as if they're holding a mirror up to us, showing us things we'd rather not see. And that can be frightening. Kafka called it a curse, because sometimes we're not ready to face all our truths. In Kafka's stories, the characters often feel exposed, as if naked in public. They feel like everyone can see their thoughts, their fears, their shame. And this makes them very uncomfortable, because we all want to choose what we show others. This rare characteristic Kafka describes the ability to see beyond appearances makes some relationships very intense. When someone knows us so deeply, the relationship can be beautiful, full of understanding. But it can also be very painful, because we feel vulnerable, as if we have nowhere to hide. Kafka learned this from his own relationships. He felt that some women in his life could see all his insecurities, all his fears of not being good enough. And this left him torn between wanting to be close to these special people and, at the same time, wanting to run away for protection. This profound vision some people have is like a very bright light. It illuminates everything, leaves no shadows, and reveals every detail. And just as we can't look directly at the sun without hurting our eyes, sometimes it's hard to bear being seen so completely by another person. The man who gives himself without reservation runs the risk of being torn apart by this intensity. The love that could heal becomes a prison. The gaze that could welcome becomes judgment. When Kafka wrote about relationships, he spoke of a special kind of danger. The danger of giving yourself completely to another person. He wasn't just talking about giving gifts or spending time together. He was talking about opening your whole heart, revealing all the parts of who you are, even the ones you normally keep hidden. Imagine you keep a secret diary where you write your deepest thoughts, your fears, your dreams. Now imagine you decide to show this diary to someone you love deeply. You're trusting this person with your most secret parts. It's a beautiful gesture, but also a risky one. Kafka realized that when someone gives themselves up like this, holding nothing back, they become very vulnerable. It's as if they were walking without any protection in a fierce storm. Any wind could knock them down. The writer also noted something sad. Sometimes, the love that should make us feel better ends up making us feel trapped. It's as if, instead of wings, love gave us chains. Instead of helping us fly, it kept us from moving forward. For example, think about a friendship where you feel like you have to be perfect all the time, or your friend will stop liking you. You can't make mistakes. You can't have a bad day. You can't be yourself. That's not freedom, it's a prison. Similarly, Kafka saw that the gaze of some people, instead of making us feel accepted, makes us feel judged. It's like being constantly tested, never knowing if we'll pass or fail. This causes immense weariness in the soul. In Kafka's stories, many characters feel constantly watched and evaluated. They're never sure if they're doing the right thing, if they're good enough. They live in fear of disappointing someone. This is the price some people pay for being different, for loving intensely, for giving themselves completely. It's like giving someone not only the key to your house, but also the key to your heart. If they're not careful, they can break everything inside. Kafka felt this toll in his own life. He was in a relationship with a woman named Felice, and he felt he could never be good enough for her. Not because she demanded it, but because he demanded too much of himself. He was afraid of being rejected, of not being loved for who he was. This fear is like a shadow that follows some people. Even when the sun is shining, even when everything seems fine, the shadow is there, reminding them that at any moment the light could go out. Kafka experienced this in his relationship with Felice. Bauer, she didn't need to scream or destroy. Simply existing made Kafka feel the weight of inadequacy, the feeling of never being enough. His life became a tribunal, and he condemned himself. Franz Kafka met Felice Bauer in 1912 at a friend's house. She was a hard-working, practical, and energetic woman, a far cry from Kafka, who was dreamy, anxious, and full of self. Even so, they began a relationship that lasted 5 years, with 2 engagements and many letters exchanged. The letters Kafka wrote to Felice are like windows into how he felt. He wrote her over 500 letters. In these letters he revealed his most vulnerable side, his insecurities, his fears. He told her how small he felt in the world, how he had trouble sleeping, how afraid he was of not being a good writer. Interestingly, Felice did nothing to make Kafka feel this way. She didn't harshly criticize him, yell at him, or humiliate him. She simply existed, with her strong personality and organized life. But for Kafka, that was enough to make him feel inadequate. It's like when you compare yourself to a classmate who gets better grades than you in school. This classmate doesn't do anything to make you feel bad, they're just being themselves. But you start to think, why can't I be like that? What's wrong with me? Kafka felt this all the time. In his diary, Kafka wrote about how he felt about Felice. He said he felt as if he were in a courtroom, on trial, but the harshest judge wasn't Felice, it was himself. Kafka demanded so much of himself, so much that nothing he did seemed good enough. He was afraid he wouldn't be a good husband, that he wouldn't be able to support a family, that he wouldn't have time to write if he got married. He was afraid his writing, which was so important to him, would suffer, but he was also afraid he would be alone forever. These fears created a storm within Kafka. He wanted to be with Felice, but at the same time he wanted to escape. He wanted to be loved, but he was afraid he didn't deserve love. He wanted to be normal, to have a life like other people's, but he felt he was too different for that. In the end, Kafka broke off his engagement to Felice twice. He couldn't overcome his fears and insecurities. He couldn't accept that someone could love him as he was, with all his quirks and fears. The story of Kafka and Felice shows us how sometimes we don't need others to hurt us, we do it ourselves. We demand so much of ourselves, so much so that we end up feeling inadequate even when no one is judging us. It's as if we have a court within us, with a very strict judge who is never satisfied with what we do. This inner judge condemns us for things we haven't even done, making us feel guilty for not being perfect. Kafka lived this way, feeling constantly judged, always inadequate, and it was this feeling he described in his books, such as The Trial, where the main character is accused of a crime he doesn't even know what it is. When love becomes absolute, the self dissolves. Kafka reveals the mechanism. A woman who sees too much can make a man guilty of himself. The relationship becomes a stage for an existential struggle between the desire for acceptance and the terror of being exposed. Franz Kafka discovered something very important about love and relationships. When we love someone too much, when we place that person at the center of everything, we can begin to lose who we are. It's as if our self, the very thing that makes us unique, begins to melt like ice cream in the sun. But why does this happen? Kafka realized it's because when we love someone deeply, we begin to see ourselves through that person's eyes. Imagine wearing colored glasses. Everything you see takes on that color. Similarly, when we care deeply about what someone thinks of us, we begin to see ourselves through that person's glasses. The writer noted that some people have a special ability to see deep within us. They see things we didn't even know were there. This can be beautiful, but also frightening. It's like someone entering a room in your house that you've kept closed for a long time. When someone can see us so deeply, we can begin to judge ourselves through their eyes. It's like we're in a courtroom being judged. But the strangest thing is that it's not the other person judging us, it's ourselves. We become our own judges, and we're often very harsh judges. Kafka called this turning man into his own culprit. It means we start to blame ourselves, to think we're not good enough, to feel like we need to defend ourselves all the time. And that's very tiring. In relationships, this creates a struggle within us. On the one hand, we desperately want to be accepted and loved. We want the special person in our life to think we're incredible, to like us exactly as we are. But on the other hand, we're afraid to be seen in our entirety. With all our parts, the beautiful and the not so beautiful. It's like wanting to show off a drawing you made, but at the same time being afraid the person won't like it. You want the compliment, but you're afraid of the criticism. In the case of love, it's even more complicated, because it's not just a drawing, it's the whole you. In Kafka's stories, characters often feel exposed, as if naked in public. They're ashamed, wanting to hide, but have nowhere to go. This feeling of exposure, of having nowhere to hide, is what Kafka calls being laid bare. The writer also realized that this struggle between wanting to be accepted and being afraid of being seen completely is one of the most important struggles of our existence. It's about finding a balance between opening up to others and maintaining a part of ourselves that's uniquely ours. Kafka struggled with this throughout his life. He wanted to be loved, but was afraid to show himself. He wanted connection, but also wanted protection. And in the end, he taught us that this struggle has no clear winner. It's a constant dance between revealing oneself and hiding oneself. The man, lost in his anguish, discovers that society doesn't understand him. While everyone celebrates ideal marriages and loves, he feels like a foreigner in his own body. Kafka knew those who see beyond are condemned to exile. Kafka discovered something difficult during his life. When someone feels things differently, more deeply or more complicatedly than most, that person often feels alone, as if they were from another planet. Think about what it would be like if you were the only one in your classroom who could see the color purple, while everyone else only saw blue and red. You'd try to explain what this color was like, but no one would really understand. Over time, you might even stop talking about it, so as not to seem strange. This is how Kafka felt about his feelings. While most people around Kafka spoke of love in a simple, happy way, he saw it as layered, complicated, and sometimes even frightening. When everyone else was planning weddings and dreaming of happy endings, Kafka was preoccupied with issues no one else seemed to notice. At weddings, people throw rice, smile, and wish the newlyweds happiness. Everything seems perfect. But Kafka wondered, what if love ends? What if the person we love today starts making us feel small tomorrow? What if we lose ourselves trying to make someone else happy? These questions aren't very popular at weddings. They make people feel uncomfortable. Therefore, those who think this way often end up keeping quiet, keeping their thoughts to themselves. Kafka felt like an outsider, not only in the world but even in his own body. It was as if he were wearing clothes that didn't fit properly, or living in a house where the furniture was all the wrong size. He didn't fit into the world the way the world expected him to. He understood that people who can see beyond the surface, who see things others don't, often end up alone. It's as if they've been sent far away, to a place no one else goes. Kafka called this exile. Exile is when someone is forced to leave their country and cannot return. But Kafka spoke of a different kind of exile, not from a physical place, but from a place of the heart. It's as if people who feel differently are sent away from connection, from understanding, from a sense of belonging. In Kafka's stories, many characters feel this way. They walk the same streets as everyone else, enter the same buildings, eat the same food, but they never feel part of the world. There's always an invisible glass separating them from others. The saddest thing is, the more they try to explain how they feel, the less others understand. It's like trying to explain the color purple to someone who only sees blue and red. No matter how many words you use, they'll never truly understand. Kafka knew this was the price of seeing beyond loneliness. When you see things others don't, you walk alone. But he also knew there were other people like him in the world. Few, but they existed. People who also felt exiled, who also saw beyond. The real danger wasn't Felice, but Kafka's own dissolution. The woman was merely a mirror. The abyss was already within him. The greater risk is living a life shaped by the gaze of another, until nothing of oneself remains. When Franz Kafka wrote about his fears in relationships, many people thought he was afraid of the women in his life, like Felice Bauer. But what he really feared wasn't outside himself, it was within. Kafka realized something very important. The real danger wasn't that Felice would hurt him or abandon him. The real danger was that, little by little, he would lose parts of himself. Like pieces of a puzzle disappearing one by one. Don't think about when you're with a friend you deeply admire. Maybe you start to talk like them, like the same things they do. Change your ways to be more like them. Some of this is normal, we're all influenced by the people we love. But what if you changed so much that nothing of your original self remained? It's like a drop of ink in a glass of water. At first, you can still see the ink, but over time it completely blends with the water, until it disappears. Kafka was afraid of becoming that drop of ink, of dissolving so much into the relationship that nothing of himself would be left. He understood that Felice wasn't the problem. She was just a mirror showing him his own insecurities, his deepest fears. The real abyss, the black hole that threatened to swallow him, was within himself. In Kafka's stories, characters often feel like they're losing their identity, their essence. In the Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up transformed into a huge insect. But the real tragedy isn't the physical transformation, it's that, little by little, he loses everything that made him human. His passions, his dreams, his connection to his family. Kafka warns us about one of the greatest dangers of relationships, living a lifetime shaped by the gaze of another. It's as if we're always asking, what do you think of me? Am I doing the right thing? Do you still like me? And while we ask these questions, we forget to ask ourselves, what do I think? What do I want? Who am I? When we live like this, focused on what others think of us, we run the risk of waking up one day and realizing we no longer know who we are. It's like being on stage, playing a role for so long that we forget who we are when the curtain closes. Kafka felt this danger in his own life. He was so concerned with being a good son, a good employee, a good fiancé, that he sometimes forgot to simply be Franz. He forgot to listen to his own voice, to follow his own dreams. The writer teaches us that we need to be careful not to lose ourselves in relationships. It's important to love, it's important to care about what others think, but we can't let that erase who we are. We can't become just a reflection of what others expect of us. The real danger, as Kafka discovered, isn't in the people we love. It's in the possibility that, by loving too much, we forget to love ourselves too. The solution isn't to run away from love, but to learn to endure the mirror without losing yourself in it, transforming vulnerability into strength, accepting the risk of being seen, but not giving up your own essence. This is the existential liberation that Kafka never fully achieved, but which he left as a warning. Kafka discovered that running away from relationships wasn't the answer. He tried it several times, breaking off engagements, distancing himself from friends, and isolating himself in his work and writing. But he realized that complete solitude didn't bring peace either. So, what was the way forward? The answer he began to find, but never fully realized, was to learn to stand before the mirror without fear. The mirror, here, represents the gaze of the other, the way the people we love see us. Kafka understood that we need to learn to look at this reflection without destroying ourselves, without losing ourselves in it. It's like learning to swim in deep water. At first we're afraid of sinking, of not being able to resurface. But with practice and courage, we learn to float, to move confidently even in the deepest parts of the ocean. In relationships, this means learning to be vulnerable without becoming fragile. Being vulnerable means having the courage to show who we truly are, with our strengths and weaknesses. It means saying, this is me, and holding that gaze, even when it's scary. Think about showing a drawing you made to someone important to you. You feel butterflies in your stomach, a fear that the person won't like it. That's vulnerability. Now, imagine showing not just a drawing but every part of who you are. That takes a lot of courage. Kafka believed we need to transform this vulnerability into strength. Instead of hiding for fear of rejection, we need to accept the risk of being seen as we are. Yes, it can hurt if someone doesn't like what they see, but it can also be liberating to show who we truly are and still be accepted and loved. At the same time, Kafka warned us not to abandon our essence. This means not changing who we are just to please others. It's important to remember that even when we love someone deeply, we are still separate people with our own thoughts, feelings, and dreams. In Kafka's stories, characters who try to completely fit into what others expect of them end up unhappy, empty. They lose their voice, their essence. Conversely, characters who completely reject others also suffer, trapped in their solitude. The liberation Kafka sought lies in balance, being close without merging, loving without losing oneself, being seen without hiding. It's like a dance, where sometimes we come closer and sometimes we move away, but always maintaining our own rhythm. Unfortunately, Kafka never fully experienced this liberation. He died young, at 40, still struggling with his fears and insecurities, but through his books and letters, he left an important message for us all. True love should not erase who we are, but illuminate our essence. The path of transformation that Kafka shows us is not easy. It requires courage to face our deepest fears, honesty to recognize our weaknesses, and the strength to maintain our essence even when it would be easier to change. But it is a path that can lead us to more authentic relationships and a more fulfilling life. The danger isn't in women who can destroy you, but in giving your entire life to a reflection that was never yours. Learn to love without ceasing to exist. What Franz Kafka discovered, after much suffering and reflection, was a simple but powerful truth. The true danger in relationships comes not from outside, but from within. It's not other people who destroy us, it's we who can lose ourselves trying to be what we think they want us to be. Think of a set of mirrors, like the ones you see in amusement parks. When you enter, you see several reflections of yourself. Some taller, some shorter, some wider, some thinner. None of these reflections are actually you, they're just distorted images. Similarly, the image we create in our minds about what others expect of us may be just a distortion, not the truth. Kafka realized that many people spend their entire lives chasing these distorted reflections. They try to be the perfect child, the perfect student, the perfect friend, the perfect boyfriend or girlfriend. And in this quest for perfection in the eyes of others, they leave behind pieces of who they truly are. It's as if every time we change to please someone, we drop a small part of ourselves onto the ground. Over time, the path behind us becomes littered with these abandoned parts, and we become increasingly empty. Kafka's great warning to us all is, don't give your entire life to a reflection that was never yours. Don't try to be a version of yourself that was created just to please others. Because, in the end, that version isn't real, it's just a phantom, an illusion. Instead, Kafka invites us to learn to love without ceasing to exist. This means finding people who love us for who we are, not for who we pretend to be. It means having the courage to show our true colors, even when we fear not being accepted. It means believing that we are worthy of love exactly as we are. It's not easy to live this way. It's easier to put on masks, to pretend, to try to be what we think others want. But Kafka discovered that this easier path leads to a very lonely place, a place where we're surrounded by people, but no one really knows us because we're hiding behind a false version of ourselves. The hardest path, being authentic, can seem daunting at first. We may fear rejection and judgment, but it's the only path that leads to true connections, to relationships where we can breathe freely, be ourselves, and grow. Kafka was unable to fully experience this authenticity in his own life. He constantly struggled with his fears, his insecurities, his sense of not belonging. But through his stories and letters, he left us a map that shows the dangers of losing ourselves in the gaze of others, and also the path to finding a way to love without disappearing. In the end, Kafka's message is one of hope. It is possible to love and be loved without destroying yourself in the process. It is possible to find people who see who we truly are and still choose to stay. It is possible to be vulnerable without being annihilated. It is possible to exist fully, even in the most intense relationships.